Welcome back to the Street Parking Podcast. We are back with another episode where we're chatting with one of our members who is here to do the vault workouts with us. This week we've got Damien Marts, which if you're part of our Facebook group, he's very well known, okay? And he's here to do the vault. He's going to do the vault this week with Molly. We won't say what the workout is because I know the podcast comes out before the workout. So we won't say that. You haven't done it yet anyway.
No, not
so
yet.
This is happening first.
That's why I'm still smiling.
He's not sweaty yet. They've only been here for a few hours this morning. But yeah, we're going to chat with Damien, get to know him a little bit better. And it's just such a cool person and a cool story. So I'm pumped. I actually set a timer for this one and I don't normally do that, but I feel like we could talk for a long time.
Yeah, I'm kind of chatty. So
I'm chatty too. And we're
Sweet.
both like I feel like kind of deep people that we could go off on a...
Yeah, the tangents can go far, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So Damien's been a member since 2019.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Desiree, your wife, was a member first. So when
She
did
was.
Desiree join street parking?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when she joined. It was 2018 at some point in time. We just moved to Texas, and she was trying to find some fitness regimen because she was like, I got to do something, get in. And she'd been part of a group of ladies who worked out together when we lived in Hawaii. And so it was out of one of their backyards. And so this gal she was a street parking member, said, hey, you should check this out. I've been following these people. I think this is actually pretty decent programming. And so Desiree checked it out. And so she started doing it. And you know, I'd wake up in the morning and drink coffee and watch her breathe hard and be like, whatever. And
Were you doing any sort of like fitness at the time?
I started running. Like
Okay.
the only like real
Classic.
running I kind of understood was like, I'm just going to go outside and run for a lot. Like when
Right.
we lived in Hawaii, I'd run a lot.
Right. It's so beautiful.
Right, yeah, but and Texas, when it starts getting colder, is not quite the place you want to go running. I mean,
Right.
the air quality is different, and like the wild animals outside. Our first night in our house, we woke up the next day, and my daughter was at the door, like, look, there's a kitty outside. Looked out there, there's a bobcat in
Oh
my
my
backyard. I'm like,
gosh.
oh, this isn't as safe as Hawaii.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I was trying to run, but it was like it was getting into winter, and it was kind of hard to get out, so I really
Right.
wasn't doing much anything.
Okay.
But she was into it. But it was also one of those things where like I'd seen her kind of like get into something and like be okay with it for a second, then sort of like fall back from it a little bit. But
Right.
she kept focused on what she was doing, and she was really consistent in going into it. And she was also consistently giggling whenever she was on her phone. Because like there's always something going on in this Facebook group, and every now and then she's like, hey, look, there's a kangaroo.
And you're just like, what?
What kind of weird cult is this? And so that's how she got into it.
You know what's so funny is there's a friend of ours who's also in the fitness industry who incognito came into our Facebook group because he also has an online program and wanted to see like what's going on in this Facebook group. Like I'm trying to figure out what the secret sauce of street parking is.
Right.
And he was on a podcast talking about it a while ago and said like I went on this Facebook group and it makes no sense at all. He's like, no one's talking about fitness at
No.
all. He's like, it's just this like chatty Cathy group where people are like diagnosing each other's, skin conditions or like asking for like pizza recipes or whatever. He's like,
Can you Photoshop my stuff?
oh my gosh, the Photoshop thing has gotten out of control. But he's like, it makes no sense. I got nothing. I learned nothing other than that it's just like this random group where they're not even talking about fitness.
Right.
And that's not entirely true, but it is. I mean, there's a lot of people in there, so everything is amplified. But one of the things that we say about the Facebook group, and you have added so much to it, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, is we wanted to replicate the conversations and the friendships that would happen in an in-person gym.
Right.
And when people go to the in-person gym, they don't just talk about the workouts, they talk about everything. And they
Yeah.
talk about like what's going on with their kids and what the vacation that they're about to go on. And hey, have you ever been to this place? Like, where should I go? I'm going there next week. And that's what happens in our Facebook group.
Yes.
And there's a lot of memes and there's a lot of...
Yeah, it's all the silly that like
Right.
but there's real people there
Yes.
though, and that like they actually act like real people, and
Yes.
sometimes they act too much like real people. You got to like reel them in a little bit and
Right.
be like, hey, stop, or Dad's gonna come in, and he's gonna be all mad, and then we're gonna
Mom's
have like
gonna
a
start
lecture,
crying again.
Yeah. And then mom's gonna come in here and start like like throwing around the band hammer. But yeah, I mean, like people come in with their real problems though, and they like people come in like, hey, I just worked out, and also and they'll drop a whole load of life on you.
Yes.
And there's so much empathy amongst the people who were there. I mean, there's a lot of really like awful advice that happens, but
for sure.
But people are trying, and
Right.
that's
They're showing
the
they care.
thing. Yeah,
They're taking the time to give an opinion or give some advice, even if it's terrible.
exactly.
advice.
And like, frankly, if it wasn't for that group, I wouldn't actually have an active Facebook anymore.
Oh, same.
Just because it's like so many things happen where it's like, you can't even like say your opinion on actual Facebook anymore without everybody coming in and saying, well, actually, according to science, but like we go in there and there's like people actually doing life, and there's actually the real life people
Right.
who are there, and that's why I keep going in there, because there are people who do things, and so
Yeah.
we get to share that experience with each other.
Okay, so you see your wife, she's actually sticking with something, and she seems to have like this connection to the group. I wanted to talk about this because this is very common. Actually, before we get into, no, let's do that. Since we're on the story, and then I'll get into talking about your family a little bit more and what you do for work and everything. This is common. We have more women than men in our group for sure. And because they share a lot, we see a lot of this. I actually saw a post today where one of the women in our group was, oh my gosh, my boyfriend agreed to do, did you see this post? My boyfriend agreed to do the challenge.
Yes.
And then my boyfriend agreed to do the vault workout. And then my boyfriend agreed to listen to the podcast. My boyfriend's signing up for street parking, and they get so excited. We see that all the time.
Right.
So there's a big group out there of men who maybe, if their wives or girlfriends or significant others or whatever can convince them to listen to this episode right now. They are you. So
Right.
what was it that drew you in, or how did you like dip your toe in the water initially?
Well, I mean, there was a couple things that sort of like all came together at once. One was that like I had realized a couple of months back that I had to do something, because I was looking for I primarily work at churches, and so I was looking for church work that wasn't happening for me, and because I'm also a veteran, I was like, veterans actually end up being cops too, and so I was like, okay, I'll go see if I can be a cop. And so I applied to this one place, and they had this big cattle call, like probably 300 dudes, all there.
It's Texas.
Yes, they do spend a good amount of money on law enforcement in Texas, and,
Right.
and so it was like, okay, good, go do this thing, and they're like, okay, here's a physical test, and so we had to bench press 90 pounds, and up to that point, I'd never actually done a bench press, and so I didn't know if that was going to be
In your whole
challenging.
life?
Never, yeah.
Wow.
And so I was like, is it going to be heavy? I got so amped, and so adrenaline rush. I probably threw it off of me, just
Right.
like, because I was like, oh, yeah, is it going to be heavy? But went through that, and then had to run 200 meters in less than a minute. And so I was like, okay, that was easy enough. Again, adrenaline just spiked me right
For
through.
sure.
Had to do 21 push-ups unbroken. I got to 20, and I couldn't squeeze another one out
That's
of
like
my
one of those
body.
things that adrenaline.
No, there was no
Doesn't help
adrenaline
with.
left for it. It was like, and I couldn't find the strength for one more push-up.
Wow.
And I was so mad at myself, because I had at one point in time been a person who could do 21 push-ups without
course.
breaking
Yeah.
a sweat. And so that was living inside of me at that point in time. Like, I need to be stronger, not just so I could get that job, but because I don't want to be weak.
Right.
And just like, I don't want to be a person who has surrendered to. I wasn't even 40 at the time yet. I was
Right.
like 38. And so I was like, I don't want to be a person who surrenders to time yet.
Right.
And so she's doing this workout thing, and she's doing whatever like right now it's Control Your Fitness. I
Right.
don't know if it was back then too.
I think it was. Well, at least in when we talked about it before this, you said that it was CYF. It might have
Yeah.
been the first year of CYF, actually.
Yeah, it may have been, but it was like there was like one point that you got was like get a non-member to do a workout with you.
Oh,
And-
this is why we do that.
Right, yeah, and so Desiree said, "Hey, come do the workout with me." And I was like, "Right, they're just gonna try to get me. Whatever, I'll come do this goofy workout with you." And it was thrusters, and I had a 15-pound dumbbell in my hands doing thrusters with it, and I was so gassed that I was like halfway into the workout and I couldn't finish because I was just roasted to a crisp, and like I wasn't even doing it with a 15-pound dumbbell, but then I had like a sweaty shoe in my hand. I couldn't lift that over my head. But later that day, after I did that with her, I felt like I had just done exercise that mattered to me. I was like, so the next day I was like, "Hey, are you working out again today?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, Can I work out with you? Can I do whatever you're doing? And so I'd start tagging along a little bit.
Can I ask you, when when you were unable to finish the workout, where you had to lower the weight or whatever, because I think a lot of the women listening to this or men, I mean, we have plenty of members who would love their wife to join too, or, you know, whatever, you know, couples, we'll just say couples in general, who would love their significant other to join in. How did she respond? Because I think that's a big question that people have, like, what do I do to encourage it? Like, did you get frustrated? How did she respond to that? What did she say to not make you feel embarrassed or
when I was
upset?
Yeah, when I wasn't able to finish, she was so encouraging. She was like, you know, it's okay. It's totally okay. Like, she treated me like I had just tried to do something that was actually hard. Mm-hmm. And
she didn't like make fun of you or something.
Right, yeah, no, she honored the effort that I gave.
Right.
And the effort that I gave was like, it was absolutely 100% of everything I had. 100% of everything I had wasn't much. Mm-hmm. But she honored that at the very least. And she said, hey, that counts, that matters. And so that, for me, it at least didn't make me feel like, you know, severely emasculated, like I can't lift my shoe over my head 20 more times.
Right. And before that, had she ever tried to get you to work out with her before that? Or was it just like you saw her doing it? Because that's kind of how I am. I'm more of a lead by example person than a drag you into it person. Julian's the opposite of that. And with fitness, obviously, we've never really had that issue between the two of us. But he's more of a, I'll drag you into it in a really fun, playful way. And I'm more of a like, let me just do it and let you be inspired, or, you know, you're always welcome. But I'm not going to like try to pull you into it as much.
He's keeping a head count of the number of people he can drag into the cold pool.
Exactly. Well, and that's so funny because we got the sauna and the cold plunge because of me, and I'm not one to be like, hey, everybody, you got to come do it. Like, I'll just do it, and then if somebody says, hey, I want to do it, of course, always welcome. Right. So we're different in that way. So before you had worked out with her, had she tried to get you to come, or was it okay? No,
she hadn't. And I'd actually experienced like functional fitness before that too. Okay. When I worked in Kansas, one of my students went off to college and came back. He's like, dude, I found this thing called CrossFit. Yeah. I was like, well, tell me about it. He told me about it. I was like, hey, we're running a Bible study. Do you want to like program some of this CrossFit stuff for us, and then we'll do a Bible study afterwards. And so we'd go and die, and after we got done dying, we'd do a Bible study. And so that was my first experience with it. Wow. And this guy, he went to a meetup in Chicago, I think, and so I went as his gear Sherpa. And it was mind blowing to me, like the number of people who were so dedicated to, you know, excellence. Right. And so when I saw what was actually going on with street parking and the level that people could aspire to, and like the fittest among us were doing, and the permission to be exactly at the level that I was, I thought, man, this is a place where you can actually grow and people are going to let you be yourself. Yeah. And that was a big deal for me. And I remember like the first couple of Facebook posts I made after I got started, I was like, y'all, I suck at this so hard. Because like there's like burpees, and I had to like do burpees in front of like a couple of dumbbells. And I was like, at some point in time, I was like, I'm just aggressively snuggling with the floor here and calling it a burpee. But people would like respond like, hey, that's funny. I was like, I think I found a people that are like my people, you know? Yeah. And like, there's never any like, whenever I talk about not being able to do a thing, there's never anybody coming in like being like a gym stand, being like, bro, what you need to do is like, just like, the people like that'll pop in on occasion, but they don't stick around because they find out very quickly it's not their, you know, it's not their vibe. Right. And so, it's been like that the whole time.
Okay. So you did the one workout. Yeah. And then the next day you're like, hey, so what about, can I do it again?
Yes.
And then kind of, how did it go from there?
Well,
to where you were officially a member. How long was that?
It was about a month.
Okay.
And Desiree would share with me like more kangaroo posts and things like that. And I do workouts with her. And then it was when Project April was coming up. Okay. And like, again, like going into I have no idea what I'm doing around fitness equipment most of the time.
For those of you guys that don't know what Project April is, it's a in the month of April, since 2018 actually was the first time we did it, we encourage all of our members, even members who have other equipment, to use only their dumbbells for a month.
Yes, yeah, and it was just this pair of dumbbells. Everything we're going to do is just dumbbells, and I thought, okay, if it's just going to be dumbbells, I can do dumbbells.
Okay.
I have no idea what I'm doing with the barbell, no idea what I'm doing with any of this other stuff, but I can throw dumbbells around for a month. And so that's what I got into it with. It's like, okay, if it has the ability to just do this, and I wasn't doing like the program A dumbbell stuff. I was mostly doing shift with dumbbells, but it was, man, it was a really great month of just saying, okay, I'm going to do it this morning. I'm not going to do it this morning, and do it this morning, and do it like this. And coming on the heels of that was then like a nutrition challenge, and I had never put two and two together about how you can actually pair fitness and nutrition for a good life.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, like wow, they actually go together. Like you can have a good relationship with food and actually call it fuel instead.
Yeah.
And so we both of us just jumped face first into everything going on with the template and all that stuff, and started meal prepping.
Wow.
And it was interesting for me because I was in that mindset of like, okay, everything's going to turn around now, and I'm going to go back to like the physical person that I was back in my 20s, because I was like super scrawny in my 20s, and then I was super unkind to myself in my 30s, eating everything that you shouldn't be eating, and my metabolism quit about halfway through my 30s.
Right, because you started having kids. Your oldest is 10 years old now, and you're 42, so early 30s. I mean, that's the stage where people really. It's not even laziness or anything like that. It's having little kids is exhausting and hard. Yes. And you pour everything into them and making sure that they have everything that they need.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I have two 10-year-olds. They're both adopted 6 months apart from each other.
Oh, okay.
And so
that's right.
Here in a little bit, I'll have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And so, yeah, they're a handful though. And like when we had those two babies, back to back, you don't realize just how much you forget about a baby until you don't have a baby around anymore. Mm-hmm. And then you have a baby in your hands, like, oh yeah, I know how to be a parent. And you're like, how do diapers work again? Even like a 6 months old baby, like difference is huge. Yes. And so, yeah, but you're absolutely right. You give up a whole lot at that point in time. You're like, you know what? I could go out and do something productive, or I could sit and stare at a wall for 5 minutes, which I haven't done for a while.
Just in peace and quiet.
Yeah. When everything gets quiet, and like I have become like a nap champion too. I love taking naps because like when they're all quiet, I'm like,
Julian's really good at naps too. I mean, he was good at naps before we had kids, but I think men have a better nap gene than women sometimes.
Well, we're able to turn our brains off quicker.
Yes.
And if you're able to turn your brain off quicker, you're able to go to sleep.
Yes.
I got a fitness watch that like tracks my sleep. And it's hilarious to me how quickly I go into like sleep and then deep sleep.
Wow.
It's just like 5 minutes of like light sleep and then done.
So 20s you were really skinny.
Yes.
30s when you had the kids, it's like you just start eating when and what you can eat, sleeping when you can, and however long you can sleep.
Yes.
And so just not taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And a large part, and then like I said, when I was in Hawaii, I was running maybe about 40 miles a week.
Wow. Okay.
So I was trying to get myself back into some kind of shape again, because I was in sort of a non-shape at that point in time. But then one of my kids ended up having, he the first thing he had was a real bad viral infection.
This is Leo.
Yeah, this is Leo. And so he went through this incredible viral infection. And we spent, I think, like 3 weeks in the hospital with him trying to figure out what was going on with that.
When was this? Like what year?
This was 2016.
Okay.
2017, somewhere in that. Yep. It was.
And he was young.
Yeah, he was little. He was 3.
Okay.
He was just newly 3, so he was just a little kid, And it started off as just a cold, and then it was strep throat, and then it was like they were very certain that it was actually leukemia at one point in time. We're like, oh gosh, I'm not ready for this. It ended up just being a viral infection. So like, okay, cool. And then 6 months later, he's starting to get these like weird like bumps on his head and stuff. We're like, all right, whatever, man. Let's just take him back to the doctor. He knows how to give blood. So one of the blood vials went to the wrong lab on accident, and that's where it was a hematology lab. And they got back to the doctor and said, well, the we don't know why you decided to send it to us first, but yeah, this kid's got leukemia. And so they had thought that he had leukemia before, but then he actually did. Then he actually did get that diagnosis. And so most times when you're about to get a cancer diagnosis, you've kind of thought about it at first.
They've said that might be like there's a little bit of a...
You've seen an oncologist once
right,
at that point
okay.
in time, but it was completely out of the blue. And so Desiree was pregnant she was 8 months pregnant with our youngest. And she was at a baby shower when the doctor called her and told her what was going on. So she walked home from the baby shower just absolutely devastated.
Oh my gosh.
We brought all the other kids. We brought our two oldest to stay with a friend, and we took him to the hospital, which he was already very familiar with because he'd already spent 3 weeks that summer with them. And that's when we got started on fighting cancer with him. And so like, you know, staying in a hospital, you don't get good food. You can't get any exercise whatsoever. So my running completely stopped. But at that point in time, it was like, doesn't matter. You know,
right.
My focus, my energy, like, you know, everything, my entire priority is on this kid right here. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the third day he was there, it was going to be like the day they took a break. They're like, okay, this is going to be the restful day. Everybody's just like, we're going to chill out for a second. I was like, man, this is the day the baby's going to be born. And that morning, I got a call and said, hey, you need to come home. The baby's on the way.
Yeah, because, I mean, that makes so much sense. Because that whole process, I mean, because I've had 3 babies and 2 of them were home births, and both, you know, all 3 of my babies were late. And they tell you, it's like, if you're in any sort of like stress, mm-hmm. you will hold that baby in your body. Like you have to like, and it's like an evolutionary thing. Like, women would go and hide in caves, and when they knew there was no predators around and that it was safe and okay, then that's when they would go into labor. Like, it's so crazy.
Yeah, and yeah,
so that makes total sense.
Yeah, it was the relaxation day, and so like and our youngest was born at home too, and it was I think labor started about 4 or 5 in the morning.
Of course,
and
always.
At 5 p.m. on the dot, he was born.
Okay.
And because we were still so early on in the cancer journey at that point in time, we're like, okay, let's collect some cord blood in case he needs the.
What year
the
was
cells.
this?
This was 2018. Yes, 2018.
Okay, because I've definitely heard this story. You guys must have just shared it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the first thing that he did in life was bring some cord blood cells in just in case they're needed. Ultimately, they weren't, which is good news because he never needed the cell transfusions because those can get kind of hairy.
Yeah.
But got to snuggle with him for a little bit, and then back to the hospital again to do the rest of the round. And at the end of the week, brought him home to just get the whole family there. And that Saturday, I don't know if you ever heard this. They're doing a drill with the emergency alert system there in Hawaii. And everybody's phones got a text message saying, "Take shelter, there's a ballistic missile coming."
Oh my gosh.
Like, can this week suck more? I was like, my mom's here in town, I've got both my kids here, and we're all about to get nuked. What? So there's a good solid 30 minutes where I was like, why? And then the information went out, I was like, no, it was a mistake. Like, oh, good. I'm glad to know we're not all about to get melted down into glass.
So it sounds like Desiree found street parking as part of her postpartum journey after Judah was born.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a big thing for her. Was it was just wanting to be focused again, not just get into shape, but also just have a mental and physical focus. And
I know that Leo, right? He was sick for a while. Like when Desiree was a member, and even when you started, like he was still going through all of that. So one of the things that I have a love-hate relationship with, I hate that it has to be a thing at all, but I do love how many families like yours who have a child who is sick find street parking because it's hospital rooms, they're doing the workouts, or so many random times or whatever. And I think so many people in that position feel like they can't take care of themselves anymore, or they won't, or they're so sad or so stressed or so anxious that they just don't.
Yes.
So what was it? Because it seems like when you started, your life was more stressful than it was even a few years before that, when you just had little kids.
Right.
Which is hard in its own right. But now you've got more kids and one of them's really sick. So how did Desiree, if you can speak on her behalf, find it in herself to be like, I need to take care of myself? And then how did you do the same thing without feeling, because I think a lot of parents in that situation, or even just parents in general, they feel guilty if they're doing their workout, even if it's only for 30 minutes and it's at home, and they feel guilty for worrying about their own food, you know?
Yes.
So how did you guys get past that as you started this whole journey?
Well, I think that the more than nothing mentality feeds a lot into that, because it's one of those things where you don't have to invest hours and hours every day just to take care of yourself. It's just do a little bit. If nothing else, just stretch. Be intentional with what you're doing with your time, because especially if you're taking care of a sick kid, they need you, and they need you to be at your absolute best. And so your absolute best is not going to be like eating all the Cheerios all the time, eating all your comfort food all the time, even though like you just want to down like that's mine is like Cheerios and vanilla ice cream. And it's like this
like together or just separately?
Together, yeah.
Okay.
I've not done that in a long time because I also feel like garbage afterwards.
Yeah. It's going to be a trend in the Facebook group now. Oh,
good Lord, no. You feel so bad afterwards. But it's, gosh. There were a lot of mornings when I would wake up at the hospital with Leo, and I would have to go find some place that was just all by myself and go cry out a bunch of tears because I needed him to not see me panicked.
Right.
And there were a lot of mornings I'd wake up and just think, man, am I watching this kid die? You know, because like they pump you full of like, one of the medicines they give you for fighting leukemia is derivative of mustard gas from World War I.
Oh
Yeah, so it's not kind things they're putting into your body, but you have to bring 100% of your best self to your kid because they need you to be at your best. They need you to be strong. They need you to be confident, and they need you to be living your life too. And so just like keeping yourself away from life just to be strong for the kid doesn't matter. I mean, that's how I wound up being a guy who couldn't do 21 push-ups in front of a job interview. It was because I was trying to, I was keeping myself back from that. And they need to see us be able to survive hard times too. So I know I've seen a lot of the folks who have sick kids in the Facebook group. They will bring just a couple little bitty dumbbells with them into a hospital room and knock out whatever they got to knock out just to keep themselves focused and moving forward. And I tried that a couple of times too, and you get a couple of weird looks. But I mean, nurses have seen a lot weirder stuff in the hospital rooms.
I'm sure.
And so like someone who's like sweating on the floor, it's not even going to really faze them all that bad. So.
Yeah. How is Leo doing now?
Oh, he's great. He's done with treatment now.
And he's 8 now. So he was.
Yes.
How long has his treatment been up to this point?
His treatment was 3 years.
Okay.
That was 3 years, 5 years, math. So he got to ring the bell in the cancer ward when he got done, which was like super emotional moment. Because like when you get done, they sing you this little song. I get choked up just thinking about it, but like they sing you the song about how you can't get treatment here anymore because you're done. And then you reach up and you ring this bell. And man, like he went in there and like he was so serious looking too. Like he had this look. I'm like, this is my mission, is to ring this bell. So he reached out there and he's just like clang, clang, and it was great, man. And we had like, because this was also the era of like social distancing too.
Yes.
We had people like drive by in their cars and they would hang a bell out their car window, and he'd reach over and ring their bell as they'd like drive past. So yeah, he got done with that, and we recently had him go to a neuropsychologist to see if any of the treatment had any sort of like long-lasting effect on him for like scholastic performance. And the guy came back to us and said, well, maybe not so much that, but he does have ADHD. We're like, oh, good, my copy paste, awesome.
It's like, yeah, he's an 8-year-old boy.
It's like, yeah, it's my kid. As a matter of fact, he was like, hey, here's some strategies for working with your son. I'm like, That's how. Oh, okay. Like that's how people work with me.
You're like, I know all the strategies already.
Yeah, I mean, like he's in school now, and he's doing great. He's the fascinating thing about it right now, he's gotten into art, and when he sits down to write sentences, his brain can't always complete the thought that he's having, because he'll have a thought and he'll try to figure out how to put it onto paper, and he can't quite get there. He sits in front of a canvas with some paint, and I don't know what goes on in his mind, but he sees everything he wants to do, and he sets down to it, and he just does it.
Wow.
And he knows what he's done is good too, and that's the thing that just like blows my mind, because he gets done, he's like, "Look at this." I was like, "Geez, kid." And so,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, I wanted to make sure to include in this episode of how he's doing now, because I know people are. And you guys share so much of that on the Facebook group. You're so good about that.
Yes.
But in case somebody listening is not part of it.
Yeah.
There's this Instagram post that I've seen going around, or I guess it's just audio and people put it over different things.
Yes.
But it's this speaker, I don't know who it is, but he's talking about when we tell our kids, you can be anything you want to be, you can do anything you want to do. And then the kid asks, well, then why don't you do that, Mom, or why don't you do that, Dad? They're always watching us.
Yeah.
And I think just him seeing you guys taking care of yourselves and being strong when he was going through all of that. Not to say that if a child in the hospital doesn't see that and their parents aren't doing that means that they love them any less or anything like that. But I think that it is a powerful statement. Where it's not just you telling them like, you can beat this, you're so strong, but it's like giving an actual physical example where they see that.
Yeah. They're always, and like the way that we react to things, they're gonna model for how they react to things. And so it's one of those things where like, if they see you doing a hard thing, they know that it's hard for you. Yes. If they see you stepping up to something and being all like false confident about something, they'll think that the only thing that they can ever do that's hard is something that they already know how to do.
Right.
But if they see us stepping up to something going like, no idea what's going on here, but we're going to do our best, it gives them the permission to explore what they might wind up being great at someday.
Right. And I think it's easy to talk about Leo because he was your child that was sick, but your other kids too, like, they were probably scared and stressed and worried about Leo also, and the family dynamic is weird because you guys are like away at the hospital and what's going to happen to our brother, but seeing Mom and Dad like taking care of themselves, and I mean that's a life lesson, because at some point when they're older, it just, the way life works, like it's going to get hard, but they saw like you got to keep taking care of yourself through that, and they saw that with you guys. Like that's so powerful to them, and it might not click for them till they're 30, 35 years old when they realize like, oh man, I'm able to do this because I had such a good model of it when I was young.
Yes. Yeah. We started biking our kids to school because it's close enough. It's a mile to the elementary school. It's about a mile and a half to the middle school. And so we bike them to school, and it started getting cold in Texas, or at least what Texans call cold. It's like here it wouldn't make anybody bat an eye, but there they're like, oh, it's freezing. I was like, dude, it's 60.
It's 54 degrees.
Right.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, and like it actually got down into like the upper 30s right before the Christmas
I've been in
break.
Texas when it's been pretty cold.
Yeah, and it's cold, and so everybody starts driving their kids to school at that point in time. I said, no, just bundle up, we're gonna go,
right.
Because if the hardest thing to do all day is that bike, and that cold bike, and the rest of everything else comes after that. They've already done something hard that day. They've already done something that they didn't like per se, but they did it, and they have it under their belt, and so they're gonna go to the next thing and say, well, I can do hard things.
Whatever, yeah, it's not a big deal.
And we make sure that they understand that's why we're doing it. It's not like, no, we understand it's cold. But
we're not expecting you to love this.
Right. But we want you to do hard things.
Right.
Because one of my kids has dyslexia. And so doesn't do a really great job of reading. And so school is very difficult for that kid. School is challenging beyond what challenging already should be. And so it's one of those things where we just say, no, our family value is to do hard things and to work hard, even though it's not always pleasant.
Yeah.
Because we get more out of it at the point in time.
I think it's cool what you were mentioning before of them seeing you guys do something and struggling with it. one of the biggest values that we feel of working out at home. And I mean, you watched me do the vault. So I did my vault workout earlier today, and I was, I'm just so dramatic about it, but I was like on the ground in between. And so, but it's so normal to them to see that, where most kids have never seen their parents that uncomfortable, especially by choice. Right. And so like, it's like, it does not faze them. I could be on the ground like, oh no. And it doesn't faze it. Like, it's so normal to them to see people struggle and, to do things that are hard. And I think that's so awesome. You're a youth pastor.
Yes.
Explain what that means.
I think the world is still trying to figure out what the actual job description is for a youth pastor. My job is to work with the students who are there at the church and kids that they know, and help them to connect with their faith, or with faith in general. With my students in particular, my big mission is to create a space for them where everybody feels that they are welcome to be there, regardless of what's going on. Okay. And so, I have 2 rules at youth group. It's be yourself and respect. And it's respect other people, respect yourselves, respect the space, and be yourself. And if you're able to do all of those things, then you don't have to put on a mask.
Right.
And so if you want to grow in that circumstance, we're going to give people the opportunity and the tools to grow and to learn all those things. They can get to them a lot better if they're not pretending to be somebody else. And so that's probably the biggest part of the biggest work I do, is to make sure that people they actually understand they're allowed to be themselves, which can be kind of hard in a church setting, because people have this image of I have to be X, Y, or Z, or because it's this kind of church, they're not going to accept this part of me here. And I've gone way out of my way to make sure people understand I don't care what's going on with culture. I don't understand what's going on with politics. All of that stuff does not exist when you come in here. You come in here as a human being who has dignity first. And if you have any sort of labels on you as a walking, talking human being, we're going to love you as a human being, because we believe that's special, that it matters. And so I get a chance to work with, right now, primarily with a lot of students who, quite frankly, kind of feral, because they're being underparented, and so it's like they come in and I'd never experienced teenagers who had food insecurity before, but I feed the students who come in, and I had kids coming in and just eating me out of house and home. I was like, man, these are hungry kids, and they're raiding the pantry. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. It's probably expired, but yeah, go ahead, man. And to the point where we make so much extra food now for youth groups, so we can actually send food home with them, so they can have a couple extra meals at home. And so it's not just spiritual guidance; it's life guidance, and sometimes it's being like an extra dad to some of these kids too, just to be proud of them, what they're doing, and what they're going through. And so it's a lot of work.
Do you guys what kind of encouragement is there for the groups that you work with for movement in general? And I'm not saying you have them out there doing wall balls or anything like that necessarily, but just movement in general, because I do think sometimes most times people look at exercise as a form of punishment. They think the only reason that anyone would ever exercise is because they want to lose weight, and they, there's this messaging out there where you don't accept yourself the way you are, so you exercise to change it. And that's this underlying thing in the fitness industry. And so we shouldn't push that on kids, because we should teach them just to love themselves the way they are. And obviously, that I don't agree with that. To me, what we've been talking about is exercise is a form of meditation. It's a form of mental health. It's a form of self-respect and taking care of yourself, so that you can go take care of your kids or these kids better, because you're more aware, cognitively, but also physically you're able to do more, and you have more energy and all of this stuff, right? Yeah. Do you guys encourage movement for the kids?
When they want to know. It's I actually treat discussions about physical fitness the same way I actually treat the discussions about faith issues, because I believe, I'm a firm believer, obviously, in what I believe spiritually, but I don't think anybody's anybody wants to know unless they actually ask.
Right.
And they're not going to ask unless I'm actually living out in front of them.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing with the way that I treat fitness issues. Is I wear a lot of street parking gear. It's actually something that they make fun of me sometimes. Like, Mr. Damien, is that another one of your fitness cult shirts? I'm like, yes, it's another one of my fitness cult shirts. But I'll talk about it sometimes. Like, hey, I did this exercise today, and now I feel like my legs want to throw up.
Right.
And so, but that's about as far as I'll take it, because like, they're not interested.
Right.
Until they are. Mm-hmm. And I had a former student who he was having a hard time figuring out. I say former student because he graduated high school. Okay. And he was going through a difficult time trying to figure out what was going on with his life. And I said, well, tell me about your sleep schedule. He's like, well, I usually fall asleep about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'll wake up at about.
What is he doing all night long?
Wake up about in social media, TikTok.
There's so many options now.
Yeah, and a Switch, and so it's like so I said, okay, cool. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to sleep tonight around 10, and then I want you to come to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to make you feel like you want to die. And
it'll be great.
And he was
problem
like,
solved.
He's like, okay. I was like, why? Why would you say yes to that? But he came over and he was huffing and puffing after the warm up. I was like, okay, don't do the full workout because he's actually going to die.
We see that a lot.
But it was one of those things where he was ready to actually talk about lifestyle choices, and it wasn't so much about, hey, come do a fitness with me. It's like, hey, come test out this thing that I do that keeps me on the level. Come test out this thing that if you're asking me, because he was asking me, what do I do? And so I said, well, you should probably get your life put onto an intentional direction first. Mm-hmm. So this is my intent. I do this every day. 6 days a week, I wake up and I go out and do this. And so it led to another discussion about his sleep schedule and also what he's eating. Because the one thing I will push on the students when I'm there is the food that we make will usually be close to the template. Mm-hmm. It may be a little extra something or whatever that's in there, but it's usually something that's made out of rice and a protein and a veggie that's thrown in there someplace and cooked with a healthy kind of oil. Because I finally got convicted one time. I was like, man, I'm so focused on eating good things myself, and I'm feeding garbage to these kids. Mm-hmm. I was like, maybe I should start treating them like I would want my kids to be treated.
Right.
So we do a lot of healthy food eating too, which is a little bit more expensive, but it's worth it. I mean, there was someone who was talking about like you either pay now or you pay later.
Yes.
And so
that's so true.
So we're like we'll pay for the expensive food now, so we're not paying for expensive doctors later.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how I work that in with the students, just as far as that's concerned, and they know that it's a part of. No, I wouldn't say like core identity, but it's definitely a big part of my schedule, and a big part of my habits is that I'm going to prioritize being physically healthy.
Right.
And so if they ever want to ask more about it, they are completely free to do so, and they know that I'm not going to make them join a fitness thing.
Right.
So if they ask me a question, they seem like they have about 5 minutes of attention span left to burn. I'll give a 5-minute answer about this is what's going on, and if they actually look like they want some pointers or some tips, we'll arrange to do a workout at a youth group at some point now, which we've done before.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Julian recently helped at his high school in Tillamook, which is a very small town. It's like a farming town. Mm-hmm. Near here. It's like an hour and a half away. He helped them remodel their entire weight room, and then he goes up there every once in a while and teaches classes, and they're doing like street parking. Like they have a whole TV set up and everything, and they do the street parking workouts. And obviously that's a different situation because they're in class, like their fitness class. So that's the expectation.
Right.
But he said that, what really fires him up is seeing the kids that you wouldn't expect, mm-hmm. or the kids that are very resistant at first, mm-hmm. like some sort of light bulb moment of like, I can't believe I did that. Like some of the bigger kids doing an actual wall walk and getting all the way up, and then all the kids, everybody's cheering and mm-hmm. everything like that. And they've just put themselves out there, and then they overcame something. Or some of the girls, he said, will just he's like, it'll be like this super quiet girl who looks very much, you know, like she's not going to be into it. And she just goes for it in the workout. And then she's like super proud of herself afterwards. Or a kid that, you know, was giving him a hard time one day and he had to like, you know, fire back at him basically. And then the kid just went so hard at the workout. And Julian was like, why did you do that? And he said, you know, because you showed me that you cared. And so I wanted to show you that I cared.
Man.
Yeah, right. And it's just a kid that he's never, like, he doesn't know these kids. He goes up every once in a while and teaches them, you know. But I think it's just, there's something about that you can learn about yourself through physical challenge that you can't learn about yourself any other way.
Yeah. We have a lot of people actually come to our garage.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. So talk a little bit about that.
Like 3 mornings a week, we'll have a bunch of them come by, and they'll do whatever the program thing is that morning. And then on Saturdays, we'll have probably a bigger crowd. And all of our kids are about the same age, and so we'll have 247 kids like out in the yard, and then we'll be doing what we do. But it's people who live down the street. It's friends we've made from the kids, friends at school. And at some point in time, like fitness may come up or something like that, and we're like, hey, do you ever do fitness things? And they're like, if they say like no, we're like, oh, that's cool, all right, and we'll move on. But if they go like, yeah, but I haven't, whatever, and you just sort of like
they'll give you their list of like, well, back in high school I hurt my knee, so I can't exercise anymore. You're like, we can figure something out for you.
And we'll work into like, hey, we have people show up at our house every now and then to exercise. If you ever want to just like stop by, and they're like, what do you do? And we'll say functional fitness, because we don't want to like. I feel like sometimes if you say CrossFit, people are like, oh,
yes.
in their head, like
the games.
Yeah, they picture the games, and people like throwing like D-balls over their heads, and like I'm not into that. But you say like, just functional fitness type stuff. That sounds so benign and simple. They're like, I could do that. And one of the ladies who joined us is she's not much taller than about 5 feet tall, and seeing her do her first box jump was incredible.
Oh,
because like
just overcoming that, like
she was getting herself so psyched up to do it. She did it, and the look on her face when she landed was like, yes. And then like the week that she decided to flip, like it was a 20-inch box, and the week that she decided to flip it up to the 24-inch.
Oh man,
dude, that's like half your height. and she started doing a whole wad just on the 24-inch height. I was like, man, this, and like the look of determination and just toughness on her face was incredible, man, because she's like, I did that.
Yeah, there's just something about it. And as adults, we stopped doing that. We stopped like trying new things physically.
Yeah.
We'll learn a new skill, or we'll learn how to crochet, or we'll read a new book, or we'll even learn a new language, which is all awesome. But there's something about overcoming physical challenges that just hits different.
Yeah, and I think part of it's because we think that we get this, we get convinced that we're supposed to know things about stuff because society expects us to know things about stuff. And so when we convince ourselves, oh yes, I know all the things about these fitness things, it prevents us from actually learning anything.
Right.
But if we can be honest with ourselves about, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Like it makes it so possible to just become a sponge and learn.
Right.
And to challenge yourself and say like, yeah, I can actually grow.
That's one of the things that I love most about this type of training too, is it requires a level of humility, because every single time you go into it, you're just like, you might have some good workouts where you're like surprise yourself with your score and things like that. But every time you're like, like even today when I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. Like it's going to hurt, and I'm going to do it to myself. And that never goes away.
Yeah, anytime I look at a workout that has 2 movements in it, I'm like, oh, jeez, I don't want to, because I know like I'm going to get tired of this movement just in time to be really tired of that moment, and I'm going to go back to the other one that I hated even more. I'm like, oh, dang, man. And so it's always one of those things where like, all right, well, I'm going to find out how much I can actually do here.
Yes.
Because we've talked a little bit in the Facebook group about like about the imposter syndrome, and which is like I've seen it being more common among men than among women, but like it's an equal opportunity affliction.
Right.
where you absolutely resist being told something because you don't want people to find out that you don't know anything about it.
Right.
And that's what I had when I first started doing street parking. Was I didn't want anybody to tell me how to do things.
I think when it comes to fitness, men do have it a lot more. Women are way more open to learning and being like, and I do feel like that there's, not for everyone, obviously, but I do feel like there's this like underlying thing where men feel like they're supposed to know all the things about physicality and fitness and everything. And like, you can't teach me anything. I already know what to do.
Yeah, and I injured my back 3 good solid times, and it was twice on back squats and once on deadlifts, and it was after the deadlift injury that I was like, I need to start paying attention to what actual good form is. I need to start listening to people who are giving me feedback on, hey, this is how you need to do this.
Right.
Stop hurting yourself. You're not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
And it was after humbling moments like that I said, okay, I need to start warming up like every single time. I saw the most incredible warm up in the entire world this morning.
Oh my gosh, we all got to learn how to warm up from John.
Yeah, fit Grandpa John.
John's episode will come out before this episode because we were workout number 6. So our workout will. So if you haven't listened to the John's episode or watched John's workout that we did together from week 6. That guy, we could all learn how to warm up from him because it was incredible.
He could give a master class. At one point in time, I was like, what's a headstand?
What's happening?
So I looked over and like,
66 years old,
and he's not showing off either. It's just like, this is his warm up. He does every time.
Yeah.
And he's like doing wall walks. I was like, I need to grow up.
I want to be like John when I grow up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have this group that comes over. I think a lot of members would be super psyched for that. How did you find initially the people to, like, how did that start?
Well, it was actually so in 2020 we won the garage gym giveaway.
We couldn't come because no one was allowed to go anywhere.
And then the crap hit every fan in the country. It was like this and like murder hornets and like no one could go anywhere. Like, ugh. And the funny thing was like the truck that delivered the weights.
I know.
You know, like it showed up and the guy had the wrong pallet jack for it, so like we had to unload every single thing out of the back of the truck. And you know when rep sends their stuff, their boxes say, "Is this heavy?" Good. He was not amused. But we had this garage full of equipment, and we were looking at it just going like, that's great for us, but man, like, what if we could share?
Right.
But we couldn't because no one could go anywhere because we had to be afraid of everybody.
Right.
And so we had to get over being afraid of everybody. But we made friends with our neighbors by saying hello to them across the street as they're going for walks, and everybody just trying to keep like grasp what little mental health they had left.
Yes.
And so we're like,
did your neighborhood do the teddy bears?
No.
Our neighborhood even did the teddy bears, where I guess if you put a teddy bear in the window, it was like a way to say hello.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's so crazy. I mean, we're in Washington. You guys were a little less restricted in Texas, but you guys were extra restricted because Leah was still sick. So you obviously had to be very careful. Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, it was to the point where like we would do the whole like what the nurses were doing at the time when they go into the garage and then strip down to your bath towel and then walk straight to the shower because like we're trying not to bring any of it in. But yeah, we say hello to the neighbors across the street. We're like, "Hi neighbor, you doing okay? Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
Is your mental health okay?" And like, and, you know, but we got to know like sort of like just like talking across the street with people, and eventually we're like, "Hey, do you want to come breathe our air with us?"
30 feet into the road.
Right. And so we started like inviting folks, "Hey, just come work out with us." And it's not something that you keep hidden very well. And so people are like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And so we're like, "You should come work out with us."
I mean, it's kind of a good time too because people had more free time than they normally would because they either weren't going to work or even if they were still working, their normal recreational activities were all shut down. So people did have more free time to pick up fitness.
Yeah, it was funny that all the weights that came to us that like 2 months later you couldn't buy weights in our town for love of money.
Right.
And we're like,
Same.
All the dumbbells in the world.
You guys are lucky you didn't get robbed.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like we put an extra lock on the garage actually, just because like we're like, what if someone sees it? But we had people moving next door. We're like, hey, you guys want to come hang out? And one of them was like, yeah, I'll come hang out. And so it's just that's just sort of how the group of us formed. Is like we'd meet people, and it would, if it came up in conversation, it was like, hey, come on over.
Nice.
Recently, there's a lady who lives in our city, who we put together a meetup, and we're like, hey, like DFW people, and she missed the meetup, but she'd been working out with the Zoom group.
Oh yes.
It's like she works out on Zoom with Rich, who was like I just watched his episode last week, and so like, but like she messaged us and said, hey, you guys work out a lot? And we're like, hey, come on over. And so she actually like met us through not having been at the meetup, but needing people. And so she's part of like the group that comes over every week too. And so we even have people like join us that way too. And she's my favorite. She's like, everybody's my favorite, but she's my favorite to compete with. And I don't compete with people physically a whole lot, just because everybody's doing their own thing. You know? Right. But it was a death by burpee workout. Oof. And she's not much taller than 5 feet tall. And so
and you're very tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6'2". Okay. And so I was making fun of like, oh, you're about to do like easy short people burpees.
You're so close to the ground already.
Yeah. And she was like, you're about to do awkward tall people burpees. Like, yep. We started going. I was like, I'm going to keep up with Michelle.
Oh,
and man. So I'm trying to keep up with Michelle, and she saw me out of the corner of her eye, and she's like, I'm not going to get beat by Damien. And so we actually made it a lot further through than I would have otherwise, because I had someone next to me who was pushing just a little bit harder, trying to not get shown up. But eventually, we were just trying to survive together, which is it was a good place to be.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our members would love to find, even not every day necessarily, because a lot of the reason that many members are part of street parking is because they don't have time every day to have the whole thing, but every once in a while on Saturdays, or a random Thursday here and there, to have a group. There is something to that when there is somebody next to you pushing a little bit harder, for sure. And so we encourage people to find that. Now, one drawback though is you might have the police called on you at 5 o'clock in the morning.
So we've had the cop called a couple of times. And it's the same neighbor every time, but it's just like, it's not that we're loud, it's just that we're like, it's a different noise going on outside. And so the first time it was because we were doing farmers carries. And farmers carries are silly, and so people were giggling as they were walking down the road at 5:45 in the morning, going like, "This is funny," and that was enough to cheese off the person.
Do you know which neighbor it was?
I do. Yeah, we've this
figured out. This is the first interaction you've had about the fitness.
Well, it's like they didn't say anything the first couple of times. Just called the cops. And then one time we were doing box jumps, which started off quietly. I can do quiet box jumps. I was really trying to be quiet, but eventually they stopped being quiet. And so I was actually down closer to the street, because we had a bunch of us doing workout that day. And eventually she came out and actually fussed at us, like, guys, can we not do this morning? I'm like, so actually, I moved the platform I was jumping onto into the garage, so I could go jump in there and not make the noise. But I think it was just because it was different sound. Because like, it's Texas, man. Someone starts off their truck and squirrels fall out of trees. Right. So a lot louder things happen at 5:45 than fitness.
Our neighborhood here, what it is it's yard work.
Oh man!
You came to our house. We live in this neighborhood where people take their yards very seriously, and there's these beautiful trees everywhere. So there's a lot of pine cones and needles and everything. Where people are out there super early in the morning blowing with their leaf blowers. Like our next door neighbor, whose wife is actually a member. He's always doing something, and so that's the same thing when people ask like, "What do your neighbors think?" or "Don't your neighbors get mad when you're pushing the sled?" or whatever, and it's like, if they're going to be out there blowing we've had to tell them to be quiet at night because we're trying to put our kids to bed. So, that's so funny. But we had not a police officer, but somebody come from the city one time, and she came over, and I showed her because one of our neighbors said that we were running classes, and I was like, absolutely not. Like our business, we have an office space, but our staff comes and they work out with us. Like no different than if we had a group of friends come over to play a pickup game of basketball in our cul-de-sac or in our front yard. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just for some reason when it's exercise, people get funny about it.
Yeah, and when you do it with excellence too, when it looks more than just someone going out in their garage and like piddling around with weights a little bit. When it looks organized, there's a timer going on, and people look focused.
Right.
I think that's when people are like, hey, are you breaking the rule about not doing anything?
Right. And you know what's funny is actually after that happened in our neighborhood, I put up something. We have a neighborhood Facebook group, and I put up on there like, hey, just so everybody knows, we absolutely don't run classes. We do have a business that's around fitness, but we have an office space. It's just our staff that comes over, our friends. And the person who had called, obviously, they didn't comment at all, but we got so many comments from people like, don't ever stop. We love it. You're inspiring the whole neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought of it as making neighborhoods more safe, mm-hmm. because if you know there's a group of people out there, and even just walking the neighborhoods makes them more safe. The more people that are out and about and interacting with each other and everything just detracts people from coming in and doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I've always thought like that it adds value to, I mean, Julian running around shirtless adds value to the neighborhood, doesn't it? That's what maybe not to the other guys. Speaking of that, one of the things that you told me in your email, because I emailed you before we were going to chat to kind of get an idea of maybe some of the stuff we could talk about, mm-hmm. is, and I think this is a really important one, the reason that you never found consistency with fitness before street parking, mm-hmm. other than like the running or some of that other stuff, is because you never identified as a gym guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that and how that maybe held you back, and how being able just to do it at home is the perfect option for someone like that. Because I think a lot of people are like, that's just not me. Like, mm-hmm. I'm just not a workout person.
Mm-hmm. I never really found myself to be sort of like a person who felt comfortable in exercise spaces. And it's a lot of that imposter thing again, where it seemed like everybody who goes to a gym already knows exactly what they're going to be doing. They figured it out beforehand, and they've been doing exercise since they've been a fetus, and so they know what they're doing, and they go there, and I go there, and it's like more like the comedian Brian Regan. You're like I'll just start moving stuff around, and people are like, dude, can you get out of the scaffolding? The painters need to use it. Like, right. Oh, sorry. And so I never felt comfortable in exercise spaces, and it was like I didn't want people to tell me my technique was wrong. I didn't want them to tell me like, hey, you're not doing this quite the right way. Or I didn't want people to look at me like it's a dumb fear, but look at me like I'm not as strong as them or something mm-hmm, like that, mm-hmm. without realizing that's not the mentality of like the majority of people who are in fitness spaces.
Everybody else is thinking that same thing, and they're
right.
not even like conscious of what anyone else is doing.
Right. Or like the people who are there in like a super healthy mindset, they're just there to work on them. And mm-hmm. This is their place of meditation. This is their place where they quiet all the voices. This is the place where they put all of the worry and self-doubt about themselves to the side, because this is something they can go do. Mm-hmm. But that I never got that. I always just saw a bunch of people who were like way fitter than me, and mm-hmm. so I can't approach this stuff at all. And so I never tried. Because I couldn't approach it. I just didn't try. But it's been interesting for me going through realizing that I don't need to compare my fitness journey to anybody but myself. Because mm-hmm. you talk about Rich McGavro. Like, I've followed him on Instagram for a while, and I was like, man, this dude is like beasting his way through a workout with 50-pound dumbbells. Oh, what am I? And I finally got to the point where like, that's Rich's journey, man. Mm-hmm. And Rich is an exceptionally fit man. And I finally got to the place where I could look at a man who has exceptional fitness and admire what he's done. Mm-hmm. Admire like what it took to get to where he is. Admire the work it takes him to get himself into that space when he goes daily, and not compare myself to that, because I'll go out and do exactly what is required for me that day. Mm-hmm. And that means that I need to go out and put in the intensity that's required of me, which is more than it used to be. And I can't say, well, like a year ago I would do this, and so that's my thing, because mm-hmm. a year ago me is not me anymore.
Yeah.
And so I've recently started doing like 30-inch box jumps with some of the box jumps because I'm a taller guy.
Yeah.
And so for a shorter person, like 24 inches, that's a super high jump. But for me, 30 inches it's not an insurmountable challenge for box jump height for me. And so like, because I can, I probably should a couple of times. And so it's like just being on my journey, but being able to go into a fitness space now where there are other people who are on their journeys and you do it together is really encouraging for me, because that's one of the things that I seek out to do. Is if I see someone really, really getting after it, is to make sure that they know that they were seen being themselves and doing their thing. And that's one of my favorite things to do now with people who are moving into fitness spaces, is just to say they need to hear at least one time from somebody, you're solid crushing it.
Yes.
And there's some street parking members, that's all they do. Like they work out too, so they can actually be part of it, so they can actually like be like honest about it. But I mean, there's a couple of the folks who I see will stalk 200 members' Instagrams just to encourage them and tell them you did a great job on that workout. And like, dude, we have one of the Heathers here.
We're gonna do an episode with her too, and I don't know if her workout is before yours or after yours, so I don't know if that episode will have already been out before this. But yeah, Heather is a perfect example of that.
Oh my gosh, man, we were sitting at lunch and we were talking about, like, someone said like, so like, what's up with the Heathers? And like, she's sitting there like, and so you saw like realization dawn on his head, like, you're her? Like, you're not a bot? But it was also like, that was like,
I thought they created this fake account.
Right.
That was
But hearing her talk about, like, that was her thing. Like, she wanted to go and like find, like, when we were using Waterfy at the time, and she wanted to go like encourage people and tell them, I see you you doing your thing. And like, for some of the people, like early on, that was everything for them, man. Like, there's like, someone saw my workout posted and they thought enough to just like it.
You know, when we started street parking, that was such and it still is, it's just the community is so big now. Julian and I, when it was just the two of us, we were very, very committed to, if anybody posts about their workout and tags or hashtag street parking, we have to comment on those posts, because there are people in my life who are like you, just wouldn't have ever felt comfortable going into whether a regular gym or a CrossFit gym and putting something on Facebook or Instagram of them working out, I know would be like a huge stretch for them. And so if that person puts themselves out there and they don't even get a good job or a thumbs up, like, that might be the end of it. You know, they might be like, oh, well, no one cares or whatever, you know, and ultimately, eventually you can't rely on other people. It's got to come from you, and you've got to do it regardless of whatever anybody else thinks. But if we can help that person to build some momentum and stuff by supporting them. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, going back to the Facebook group is so great, because we don't have the form police. If somebody asks, and people do, they'll be like, hey, check my technique on this. And again, you'll get good advice and not so good advice when you do that. But usually if you don't ask for it, people know that that's not what you're looking for, and that you just need to hear a good job. And we have people, usually newer members, who are like, oh, all I did was shift today, or all I did was this, or I didn't do 5 rounds, all I did was 3. And you'll see in the comments of everybody, they're like, don't say it like that, like, you crushed it, whatever. And that's such an important message and part of it. And so I think one of the great things that we've been able to provide through street parking is, hey, if you're uncomfortable in those spaces, go buy a pair of dumbbells or a couple pairs of dumbbells, and without anybody watching you in your PJs, try to do it on your own and just move slow and look awkward and be weird, and no one's going to see it. No one's going to judge you. And more than nothing counts. And if you need to change the workout or do shift or even do less than shift, it's all important, and it all counts. And just, you don't need to have any, you know, you don't need to go into those spaces to be fit.
Well, you know, it's you talk about the, like, trying to go on the site to be encouraging. There's a bunch of times when it was my first post in the Facebook group.
Oh my gosh, there's been so many.
Yeah, but it was like, I posted and I, like, you reacted to it, and I looked, I was like, who's this person? And I saw, like, founder of, so like, like, hey, the person who founded this, because like that's not normal. It's not part of the business natural for
Right.
people to who create something to be so invested in the people who consume a product, who join into a program. And so the fact that you and Julian, everybody who is here as part of the staff, are so invested in the people, and like not just like nominally invested. I mean, like
Right.
emotionally invested in who the people are. You actually see who everybody is, and people receive that. It's not just like like I said, it's not like a token thing, and like it's not like you guys can follow all 30,000 people who are going through everything, but there are moments that matter. And there's always at least somebody who's there. I mean, there's one of the people who I tried to keep up with her Facebook likes one day, and I was like, nope, I'm not going to keep up with her at all. Nope, she's just crushing it. But the fact that I got so much interaction with you guys when I would post about things actually encouraged me a whole lot. It's like, hey, I should keep posting about this. And so that's actually what led to me posting on the often as I did, was because it was like I felt like it mattered.
Yeah.
And like,
And now you're so well known that when you comment or you like someone's post, it means a lot to them.
Well,
and so we have these like people that are in the community who don't even work for us, but they're recognized as like, I don't know, leaders in our community where it means a lot to them to see, oh my gosh, Damien, who does the amazing word poet posts, commented on my post, so it's meaningful.
I like someone like blew my mind at one point in time. They said, hey, I've been writing this. Can you like give me a read on this? I was like, yo, dog, that's not me, but yeah, sure. And so I gave
an English teacher.
And so I gave some feedback, and I was like, man, this is a really cool place to be,
Yeah.
But that's the space I've always wanted to occupy, is just to be able to encourage people as a person who is like, I've never felt like an insider person for fitness spaces, but to tell people like, hey, go out there and do this thing because it matters a whole lot. And that's a lot of the posts I'll write. Will like try and call out to people who maybe stalk the Facebook group but have been inactive for a while. Like, hey, today's a good day to get back in. Today's a good day to start. Like, just today, totally okay to just do today. And if you're not in it for like the long haul, it's okay. But today actually does matter. And so I do try and message that out more often. I try to do funny stuff every now and then too, because like I'll have funny stuff happen. I'm like, I have to go share this with my friends. It's like I'll like headbutt a box or something like that during like a burpee box jump. I'm like dunk. Like,
no, you're so funny. I mean, you're so if you haven't seen Damien's posts, or if you've only seen a few of them, just go search, because you're a really good writer, and you just have a way of explaining or putting into words the experience of different things, but like the experience of that workout, and in a way that is very funny, but also very real and very like relatable for people. They're so good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's because every single time we get into a workout, I start feeling like, oh no, what is going on here? Something will come to mind, and I have so much extraordinary clarity first thing in the morning when I'm doing a workout where I'm trying to not drop a kettlebell on my face. And that's where those things will start. I'll have like, it'll start off with just a phrase. I'm like, hey, that's funny. And so I'll like go through the entire rest of the workout. I was like, just keep hold of that one phrase. Keep hold of that one phrase. Yeah. Because it's, for me, I'm just trying to encourage people, hey, go out and be a real human who does these things. And this is a funny thing that happens during this specific workout.
Yes. And people relate to it. They look for it, and they love it so much. Well, because of that, I wanted to read one of the things that you put in the email to me, kind of to close this off. And like I said, I had to start a timer because we could talk so much longer. But I think I wanted to share this to give an example of how good you are with words and your thoughtfulness around everything, but specifically fitness. I found consistency trying to find where I fit in the SP space. So many people chasing demons and dreams through their weeks found strength to do so by starting off the day or ending it with fitness choices. I love to cheer people on, and I find it a lot easier to do so when I've been doing the work too. And it's just like chasing demons and dreams. I mean, that might have to turn into a sticker or a t-shirt or something. So thank you so much for being here with us this week and for sharing what you share about your family and just encouraging people and the words that you write on Facebook. It means a lot and it goes a long way. And I can't wait to see how the workout goes for you tomorrow when you do it.
Oh boy.
With Molly, who's very fit.
Yes, she is. She's and I are both
tall, though.
We are both of us really excited about this workout tomorrow. And by tomorrow, we might actually be convinced of that too.
All right. Well, people will be excited to watch it.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome being here.
Awesome.